All right, well, my name is Wendy Vendoni, and I'm really excited that I get to introduce Elizabeth. So let me just give you a quick background. So Elizabeth Adams has been in technology for over 25 years in various leadership roles. She has enjoyed a successful career in leading large technology teams, programs in retail, telecommunications, insurance, as well as the Department of Defense and various other intelligence agencies. Recently, Adams has also joined the United Nations of Key Constituents of Roundtable of Artificial Intelligence. And if that wasn't enough, she is, well, I mean, Elizabeth, really. She is also the Stanford University Fellow, Race and Technology. And she is passionate about teaching, advising, consulting, speaking, and writing on the critical subjects of diversity and inclusion in artificial intelligence, as well as racial bias, facial recognition technology, video surveillance, and predictive analytics. And you guys, literally, there was so much more, but it's short. And
no, it's good. You did good.
You're also part of the Data Ethics for All. So let's give a warm round of welcome. And Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll just need sharing privileges so I can share my screen and so we can get started. I'm super happy to be here.
And I don't know if I have that. You don't have the option at the bottom?
No. Oh, there we go.
You're like
all
that.
Right.
We're that good.
All right. So you guys tell me if you can see that there. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. All right, well, thank you again. Thank you, everyone. I am Elizabeth Adams. I'm super, super excited to be here. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I work at the intersection of cybersecurity and AI ethics. As mentioned before, I'm a race and tech fellow at Stanford University, where I am pursuing a civic tech project, which includes ethics and AI, data collection and surveillance, which we'll talk about. And I'm curious, so if people could just kind of drop a note and let me know where they are watching from. And feel free to add questions, and I hope that I'll be able to get to them throughout my presentation. I'm also going to set my timer here so I don't go over. So my fellowship consists of 3 very different or interconnected parts, so it's not so much different. So there's a civic tech piece, which I'll talk about, which is around public oversight of surveillance technology. There is the piece in the middle, which is a tech insertion model that I designed really for conversation. And it's used as more of a litmus test on when technology is being implemented and adopted in the Black community. Is it going to help uncover or eliminate racism? And so these are conversations that I'm hoping to have around my tech insertion model. And then third, my intern at Stanford is working on a presentation on a community response command center. So when we have another pandemic or a flood or a fire or some sort of homelessness issue, this particular effort is really centered around how do we get the community involved to help make decisions that are fair and equitable about what services our residents get. So that's a little bit about my presentation, excuse me, about my fellowship. So what is civic tech? Let's talk about it and why someone would even want to get involved in something like civic tech. So civic tech enhances the relationship between people, their community, and their government by giving voice in the public decision-making process. And this helps to improve the delivery of services to the community. So beyond the lakes in Minneapolis, beyond the businesses, the homes, and the buildings, there are people in Minneapolis that are very concerned about civic tech. And they're concerned about the technology that is being used by the government. So without a focus on public oversight of data collection and surveillance technologies, communities can face unintended harm. And most of the time, that is negatively impacted in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities, as well as vulnerable populations. So this is why I feel it's so important for diverse perspectives to be a part of technology conversations in all levels of society to ensure proper representation. The path to public oversight of surveillance technology is not quick. I have been working on this most of the year. It takes a lot of relationship management, takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of resolve, and of course, inclusiveness of all perspectives, and those perspectives, whether you agree with them or not. All right, so what is PostMe? So let's just talk a little bit. So as part of my fellowship, I mentioned this particular civic tech effort, but you cannot do a civic tech effort alone. So this year I joined a group of brilliant social and civic leaders to form a coalition. And our goal, as I mentioned, is to push for public oversight of surveillance technology. We've met just about every week this year. And through these conversations, we have found some real meaning, but also some of the conversations could have dire consequences if we're not upfront and transparent about what we're trying to do. So PostMe stands for Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology and Military Equipment, and the MN is for Minnesota. It is based on the ACLU's CCOPS measure, which is community control over police surveillance. The COPS model has been adopted in several cities, and we adopted it in Minnesota and customized it based on 3 additional things. One, we wanted to get feedback from adjacent cities who are also pursuing a measure such as this. We wanted to be inclusive of as many surveillance technologies that we know about and those that we don't. We also wanted to incorporate feedback from not only the community, which is extremely important, but from our elected officials, our city council members, the city staff, the city attorney, commissions and boards such as the Civil Rights Group, the Race and Equity Division, and the Audit Committee. So this is a live document, and it has been unanimously approved to go into committee by the City Council back in July, and so now it's making its way through the different divisions in Minneapolis for their feedback. All right, so why PostMe in Minnesota? I've heard at least in 2 different talks, I think it was one in Shipley's opening, and then the last session, people were talking about George Floyd. And so for PostMe in Minnesota, we have a large number of people in our community that's pushing for police accountability, simply put. They're pushing for more transparency and oversight. In February of 2020, Minneapolis passed its first Data Privacy Principles Act, which includes language such as the city must inform its residents about the data that they're collecting, why it's being collected, and how long they intend to keep the data. This has served as great momentum for PostMe. But let me just pause here real quickly to say that I live in Minneapolis. I'm from Minnesota, born and raised. I recently moved back here a couple years ago, and I live about a couple miles away from where George Floyd was murdered. And I have been to the George Floyd Memorial, and it is chilling. And that's one of the reasons why I do this work, is because I have a lived experience of racism, discrimination, profiling. I could go on and on. I've been a technologist, as mentioned, for a long time. And so I know what it feels like to be excluded. And I wanted to take my passions to the data policy level. And so that's one of the reasons why I do this work. All right, so let's talk about the different types of surveillance technologies that are a part of our draft ordinances. And they fall really in 3 basic overarching areas, which are computer vision, location tracking, and biometric tracking. And I'll cover a little bit more about Amazon Ring and heartbeat lasers. Also, I want to draw your attention to something new that we uncovered during our research this year, and that is surveillance around energy consumption and smart grid surveillance. We have learned that there are several landlords here who are interested in monitoring a renter's energy consumption to be able to tell if they are exactly the number of people who are living in the unit who have signed the lease. And so we are, again, asking for this to be included because we think that some of this is becoming overreaching, I should say, into communities. And we want to just make sure that there's public oversight of any types of surveillance that's happening in Minneapolis. All right, so most of us know about Amazon Ring. If you don't, let me just tell you quickly about it and why it is one of the things that's included in our draft ordinances. So Amazon Ring is a smart home security. It's owned by Amazon, and it's manufactured many security products that incorporate outdoor motion detecting cameras. It also hosts an app called Neighbors, which is something that I've learned about recently, that it encourages online sharing of the captured footage. So Amazon Ring has over 1,300 partnerships with various law enforcement agencies. And Amazon is actually coaching police on how best to talk to residents in terms of handing over their footage and opting in so that they don't have to get warrants. Amazon is also in the business of dictating to local police departments what they can and cannot say about Amazon Ring. Amazon Ring has partners. There's no transparency in who those partners are and what they're doing with that data. So on one hand, Amazon is saying, yes, we do believe in legislation to help uncover, biases in facial recognition technology. But then on the other hand, they are using Amazon Ring to help law enforcement, as I mentioned, to do more overarching surveillance into the communities. The next one I will cover briefly is heartbeat lasers. So heartbeat lasers is a US military laser ID that can uniquely identify your heartbeat hundreds of feet away. And other types of surveillance or identification, such as facial recognition, can be derailed if the faces are even partially covered. But in contrast, cardiac patterns are difficult for an individual to change deliberately. So that's where Jetson comes in. It reads your heartbeat from a distance using vibrometry, and it's a contact-free laser technique that measures vibration on a surface. So there are some limitations to this. As I mentioned, it cannot penetrate through thick clothing, and they also need some sort of a cardiac signature database to be able to map your particular and unique heartbeat too. All right, so this is the path that I have taken this year on this Civic Tech project. Started with my Stanford Fellowship kicking off in February. I had a number of meetings with city council members. Not sure if I mentioned, but I'm also an appointee for the City of Minneapolis Racial Equity Community Advisory Committee. And so through those groups and independent research, just started kind of understanding and imagining what this would look like. And then in second quarter was when the coalition formed. We began to meet, creating definitions, also meeting with council members, talking with adjacent cities, kind of figuring out what this was going to look like. And then third quarter, our ordinances were introduced by the city council. Our sponsor is Councilmember Stephen Fletcher. As I mentioned, those were unanimously approved and are making their way throughout Minneapolis for feedback. And we are hoping that in fourth quarter, our ordinances will be passed and we will be the next city that has public oversight of surveillance technology and military equipment. This really brings me to the close of my presentation. And I really want to just highlight this slide because one of the things that's important for me, even as a technologist, is to make sure that all the conversations that I have are human-centric. I started my quest in artificial intelligence a couple years ago, and I met with a number of data scientists. And when I started having conversations about ones and zeros, it kind of neutralized everyone. So I had to start having a different kind of conversation and help them understand the second and third order consequences of their work. And even with the city of Minneapolis and others that I work with, most of the folks are not technologists. And when technology is sold to, specifically AI-enabled technology is sold to staff in a city such as Minneapolis, many of them are not technologists and many of them don't get ample training. And they are being sold a product based on an initial problem that they have, such as we want to track bad guys. But we all know the harms that that can have with predictive analytics and some of the other things that we have seen. And so this is really the heart of how I do my work, is that it's human-centered. With that, I would just like to invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions or you'd like to further the conversation. These are just a few articles that I've written. And again, for me, I like to keep things at a higher level so that I can engage people in really, really tough conversations, but just kind of started at a higher level. And another fun fact about me is that I've written a few children's books. It helps me, develop the solutions that I do, in the tech space. But That's it. I just want to thank again Shilpi and the entire Data Ethics for All team for having me and for creating this amazing opportunity for us to engage in very, very important conversation. And with that, I will turn it back over.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I just want to quickly add one more thing. Great presentation about your children's books.
Oh, yeah.
And also suddenly Elizabeth has become the video queen, artificial reality and video. Like if you want to learn any tips on how to create great social media videos with virtual reality, to go talk to her.
Yes, that's another one of my passions that I've taken on.
Those
So,
are
yes,
awesome.
absolutely.
Love seeing your updates on LinkedIn on those. Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, thank you.
Take care.